This is Conversations with Women in Sales, an award-winning podcast created by Barbara Giamanco, who hosted the first 67 episodes. Listen to interviews with amazing women about their journeys in their sales careers, often discussing sales leadership tips, ideas, and strategies. We aim to inspire women to consider a sales career and for some women to grow into sales leadership. Men, we appreciate your allyship. And now, your host, Lori Richardson.
Big shout out to our official sponsor, Reprise, the leading full funnel, product-led growth platform. With Reprise, your sales team creates, presents, and shares product demos, perfectly customized for each step of your sales motion. Go to getreprise.com/womenInSales to try for free today. Hi, everyone. I'm here today with Robin Treasure. Robin runs Robin Treasure Consulting, and she's also the author of this fairly new book called Heart-Powered Sales, Grow Your Sales Exponentially with Emotional Intelligence and Intuition. So, Robin, it's so nice to have you here. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Lori. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I've enjoyed reading your book, and we're going to put it in the show notes so people can track it down. I find there's a real lack of female authors talking about sales. And you and I talked a little bit before we started recording about the fact that there are a lot of women who don't really even know that selling, like other than retail selling, that is a real career, that business to business selling, for example, is a real career and a really valuable one. And you are really an advocate for sales, right?
Yes, I love this. Love sales. Yes.
That's great. And you had an interesting start to your adult life, because I was noticing that you got a master's degree, and this was from not just any university. You went to Brandeis, which is a really amazing place, and you got a master's degree in Italian translation, right? What did you think you were going to do? I'm curious.
Yeah. So that was the start of my first career as an Italian translator. I always loved languages. I minored in Italian as an undergraduate, and I just loved it so much. I had already become fluent in Spanish. So when I was studying Italian, I just fell in love with it and decided that I wanted to get a master's degree because I wanted to become an Italian translator. And
Amazing.
yes. And so I pursued that. And actually, once I completed the master's degree at Brandeis, I moved to Rome. All I had was the name of one friend of a friend. I packed up all of my belongings into like 5 suitcases. I had a little bit of savings.
Wow.
No job. I just moved over. And that was the start of actually what became an incredible career as an Italian translator. I was freelancing and doing translations in the film industry and wine industry there. Then later moved to the States. So I spent 4 years in Rome, actually, and then moved to the States and continued as an Italian translator and organizing cultural events at the Italian Cultural Institute. And that ended up being about a 15-year career in Italian translation.
That's amazing. And then you gained an interest in health and nutrition, or did you have that all along?
Yeah, so that was kind of a percolating interest all along, but then I really decided that I wanted to pivot and change careers completely, that I felt that I had really kind of reached my limitations with, the world of Italian translation, and I really wanted to pursue my interest in health and nutrition. So I became a health coach, and I launched my practice as a health coach, which unwittingly, I was getting a boot camp training in sales, because when you launch your own practice as any kind of a service provider, any kind of a practitioner, you are having to sell your services.
Yeah.
So that
always surprised me about people launching an entrepreneurial effort, is that they didn't always realize that they're going to You have to sell.
Yes. Yes. And it can seem so painfully obvious, but when you're passionate about your trade and your subject matter, health, wellness, whatever it is, life coaching, you don't give a lot of thought to the sales aspect to it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm in hindsight, I'm extremely grateful for that because I not only did get that training and that understanding of sales and the sales process, which can of course differ in different industries, but I also gained so much knowledge about health and nutrition. And it was that knowledge about health and nutrition that later allowed me to become a B2B salesperson
Yeah.
for a company that is highly regarded that makes high quality professional grade nutritional supplements.
Hmm. Okay.
So that experience, that path that, some the listeners may be saying, like, how do you make the leap from from being an Italian translator and living
Right.
in Rome to being a health coach? Every step along the way, you're getting this incredible experience and knowledge, about a particular industry or field. And that is what you can apply as a salesperson and be really successful.
Yeah, and along the way, I mean, clearly because of what I've seen in your book, you realize that you can sell differently than what the stereotypes about bad selling is.
That's
And
right.
you were able to put it together in a book that I think is a really great one for women to take a look at, anyone for that matter, but women in particular, since that's the goal of this podcast. And by using, your intuition, what's inside of you, rather than copying what the guys do, which is how I started in sales. You just basically copied what other people did, and it didn't feel genuine to many of us, especially women, who I can't just copy what a guy does and do the same thing. I have to bring my own traits and strengths, and this was nothing anyone taught us. It was something we learn over time. So did you pick up a lot of those things on your own just by observing, or how did that happen?
Yes, I was really fortunate to be given free rein to really approach things in a way that came naturally to me. And so, yes, you kind of were taught a certain style, a certain approach that you probably had to unlearn in a certain way as time went on, and right, and become more approach things in a way that felt much more natural to you, right?
Yeah, and even today there are male sales managers who, typically in B2B sales, you're really good at sales, so you get promoted to being a sales manager.
Mhm.
And those two jobs don't have a lot to do with each other. Being really good at sales can be a very selfish effort. It can be a very self-involved effort, if nothing else. And being a manager, you need to support all sorts of different folks with that are bringing different skills and traits to bear. And unfortunately, without a lot of good training that a lot of managers haven't gotten in the past, haven't learned how to coach people. And so a lot of us would just kind of push what we know onto other people and just expect them to do the same because it worked for me. It should work for you, Robin.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that's unfortunate that the way our industry has been developed over many years.
Yeah. It's really true. And as you say, what worked for one person, for that, especially in a male dominated field, what worked for them, it may have worked great for them, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work in exactly the same way for that female member of their team. And what sales, B2B sales especially, just offers such a great opportunity for women to lean into their natural gifts. And that's really the premise of my book, is that you you can lean into your emotional intelligence and really learn to cultivate that as well as your intuition. These are incredible gifts that are available to us that enable us to connect with our customers in a much more present way, really being there to offer value, being attuned to what they need, listening to what they need, and really collaboratively talking about the solution that's going to best serve them. And these gifts of emotional intelligence and intuition are truly available to men and women. But as a generalization, we women are gifted with these abilities. And I truly believe that if we can lean into them more and really embrace them and not feel that we have to adopt the more conventional approach that is typically comes off as being pushy or salesy, right? We don't have to take that approach. That's the good news. We can do things differently and be just as, or perhaps even more successful.
Yeah. There's nothing about aggressiveness in the selling that I've ever done over 30 years, but I have been competitive and I have been assertive
Mhm.
and I have been great at follow up. It doesn't mean I have a lack of desire. I have a very high desire for success. So people don't always understand that and they're just not clear about it. And the proof is in the pudding because we're still short on women in every level in business to business selling in almost every industry, not all, but many. So that is work to be done for sure. And so if people can pick up, understand that there are other ways that you can go about success. It doesn't have to be one cookie cutter plan.
That's absolutely right. And I love the distinction that you make between being aggressive and being assertive.
Yeah.
Distinction there. Being aggressive is really very self-interested, and you're most likely going to push away your prospects and customers by doing that.
Yeah.
Being assertive and being good at follow-up, those are things, being pleasantly persistent, those are all qualities that will help you to excel and will actually help you to kind of flex your own personal muscles and self-confidence. And that's one of the benefits of being in sales, is that you do have to challenge yourself to follow up, to be assertive. That ends up benefiting you just in your own personal development, and also benefits your customers and benefits your business, your book of business.
Yeah. And it starts with selling a product or service that you believe in, right? We talked a little bit about that too. If you don't believe in what it is that you represent, I think it's very hard to be successful at that.
100%. I mean, I truly believe that has to be, you have to start with something that you passionately believe in, that you know will bring value. You can't sell something you don't believe in. And so I really do believe that that's where it starts.
Yeah, I had a little stint because I grew up selling technology in the early 80s, and in the 90s, I transitioned. I had an opportunity to work for a former colleague who went to it was a copier company. And what I found was that people were kind of cheating the system and they were kind of tricking customers. And I so hated it. Just the idea of it, that I didn't last there more than just a couple of months, maybe a few months, because I knew the guy who wanted me to stay and see if I could make it work. But, it was an example for me of a time where I just didn't believe in the company.
Yes.
And that I didn't like working around people that would come back to the office and laugh about tricking their customers, because it just didn't work. But money isn't everything. And I was a single parent at the time. Nonetheless, it was not something I wanted anything to do with.
It's so true. And, that's an experience that you'll never forget, right? Because that cringy feeling of watching those tactics happen behind closed doors, you don't feel aligned with it. It doesn't feel good. And how can you be successful in a sales role, representing something you don't believe in? In fact, in my book, I share a short little story about that. I actually did have a very short stint in sales early when I was still in college. I spent a semester abroad in Milan, Italy, and I wanted to take on a little side job just to make a little extra money. And there was a company that sold knockoff perfumes door to door.
Huh?
So they needed salespeople. And here I was, zero experience. I was a student and they didn't care. I mean, it was that kind of an operation, right? So it was like, housewives and students, that would do this. And so, my training was like on the drive on the way to a little town.
Yeah.
The driver slash sales trainer is telling us what to do, how to sell these knockoff perfumes. And I had zero idea of what to do. Anyway, I had a little kit of samples. And I was supposed to go into an apartment building, knock on a door, and whip out my bottle of perfume, knockoff perfume, and ask to spray their wrist. And so I'll never forget how I felt the first door that I knocked on. I was shaking. I was terrified. Here I felt like this intrusive salesperson, which I basically was. And this woman wearing an apron, she's cooking lunch at noon, answers the door. She looks baffled, like, what is this American, doing standing here, speaking in Italian, but with an accent? And, it was all kind of a bit of trickery, right? I was supposed to first ask her if she wanted to see this brochure. So she was being polite. She says yes. And then it seemed as though she was interested. So now I have to ask her if I can spray her wrist. She took a step back, kind of like recoiled and said, "No, sono allergica. I'm allergic." And I was like so apologetic. I said, "I'm so sorry. I apologize." And I basically ran out of the building, and I just felt mortified, right? Mortified. And to me, that stuck in my mind indelibly for so many years.
But that's what sales was.
That's sales. That sales is about being intrusive and pulling the wool over their eyes and using trickery.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just so not like that. And for women listening who may not be in a sales role yet, if someone has shared this podcast with you, or if you're in your early phases of selling, it is such an opportunity. What I love about sales is that I can choose the types of products and services I want to represent. I know a woman who she wants to do a lot with the environment. And so she's looking for SaaS-based services and products that help the environment. And so she has this very narrow niche of companies. And even though companies offer her other opportunities and big pay and everything, she's really set on what she wants to do in helping the environment. And you can totally do that, as well as once you're successful in some of your selling, you can be more flexible in terms of your hours. You can be flexible about where you live. I mean, certainly now we have a virtual world in most every company. That wasn't the case when I started, but there's just so many nice things about hitting a number and knowing what your number needs to be. So I don't need someone to give me their opinion of whether I worked or not. I can tell by my numbers. I can tell myself, and I love that so much. I've had people in corner offices giving me their opinions, and I don't care for that. I would much rather see the science of the numbers of whether I made the calls, whether I closed the deals, and whether I'm helping the company grow.
So true. The numbers will speak for themselves. And that is really it levels the playing field a bit. Right. And so you can really take on that challenge and almost make it a game. I do advocate the importance of detaching emotionally from the outcome. Don't be attached to the outcome, right? Continue to be present, be of service to your customer. But at the same time, when it comes to the numbers, you're hitting your goals and targets, you can get playful with it and have fun and get competitive with yourself.
Yeah.
I've heard you mention that in the past, that you like to get competitive with yourself, and that's a great quality.
Yeah, I award myself prizes when I accomplish a goal.
I love that. Yes. And everything that you said about, the flexibility that it affords you, it's all so true. I agree so much, especially if you have young children and you need to have that flexibility. It's pretty incredible. The other thing that I really love about sales, especially in B2B sales, is you can be intrapreneurial. If you have an entrepreneurial spirit, but you don't necessarily want to forge out on your own, embrace the opportunity to be an entrepreneur within a company that's giving you this incredible structure, history within the company, a marketing team, whatever resources are available to you, leverage that. Think of all of it as your own business, and you are the CEO of your own book of business within this incredible framework that gives you so much support that you wouldn't have on your own as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point in terms of having a sales territory, having a book of business that's yours, and you can excel with it. Maybe it doesn't work out, but that's yours to develop or not.
Absolutely. Yes.
Right. So we're going to encourage people to get out and check out your book, Heart Powered. What have you learned writing the book, or since it's been out? What's one thing that you learned about yourself, maybe?
Well, in terms of writing the book, I really learned to embrace my own story and to really share my own story. I was fortunate to have a couple different groups of beta readers who read different iterations of my book. And when I look back to version number 1, that was really the skeleton.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful to my beta readers who said, like, this is a good skeleton, but it needs more meat on the bones.
Yeah.
I want to hear more about you and your story. And that really gave me the encouragement and permission to share more about my own experience, to boast about what I've done. It's kind of hard to put the numbers out there and say, this is what I did. But now I can proudly say, in my B2B sales career, when I started in my role, the annual revenue in my territory was $220,000. After 5 years, it was $2.8 million. So I more than 10x'd my territory in the course of 5 years. At first, it was scary for me to share that.
Yeah.
But what I've really learned is share your stories, share your achievements, because you can help inspire others to do the same.
Yeah, absolutely. That's for other people to go, wow, that if she can do it, I might be able to do it too. So
100%. I'm not a quote unquote, trained career salesperson. This is something that came to me naturally, that I developed and came into. And so, yes, if I can do it, anyone can do it.
Oh, that's wonderful. So you were going to share also a couple of podcasts that you recommend as well, which I think is great.
Yeah, absolutely. So one that I would highly recommend is called Winning the Challenger Sale. The host is Jen Allen. And every time I listen to her, I am so inspired, and I feel like I've just gotten an up leveling in my education. She's just incredible with what she shares. So I highly recommend that one. It's a newer podcast, but of course she does a lot with Challenger, and
she's a recent guest on our show. And she was with CEB for a long time, and it is with Challenger now. And does great things.
Yeah, really great things. So highly recommend that. She's also very present on LinkedIn, so she posts a lot of great stuff there. The other podcast that I would recommend is called Creating Confidence with Heather Monahan. Every time I listen to that podcast, I just come away with some incredible pearl that I can apply in my life. And she's got some really interesting guests. And then she also shares a lot about just her own journey. She was Chief Revenue Officer of a major corporation and then has gone on to do other things. So she's also one to follow and listen to. So
yeah. Heather's fantastic as well. I'm a big fan of both. That's great. Yes. Robin Treasure, how can people find you? What's the best way to connect with you?
Yes. So connect with me on LinkedIn. I love connecting with people on LinkedIn. If you'd like to find out more about me and what I do as a sales coach and sales trainer, you can go to robintreasure.com. And if you'd like to check out my book, that would be fabulous. The book is Heart Powered Sales. Heart and Powered there's a hyphen between those that you can find easily on Amazon.
Fantastic. Robin Treasure, thank you so much.
Thank you, Lori.
You. And,
thank you.
We look forward to what is ahead for you next.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Conversations with Women in Sales. You can find all of our episodes at womensalespros.com www.strategist.com/podcast. Help us spread the word and let's change the face of B2B sales.